Hello everyone and welcome back to this Football Manager 2017 experiment where we take a look at what would happen if you brought the gang back together from FM 2007, you found all of the Wonderkids, put them in the same team and then pushed forward a couple of seasons. Now last episode we took a little trip down memory lane looking at the history of some of these players that we used to sign 10 years ago when we were still really discovering Football Manager, and look at some of these names. It really does just bring the memories back. It's also interesting that we didn't really look at the value of some of these players. Now if we sort them by valuation, obviously the players at the top, we've got Aguero, Messi, Sanchez, players that they really got right. Then you've got some of the other mainstays, the likes of Walcott, Veo, Marcelo, Sergio Ramos, David Silva, Luka Modric, some world-class players, company in there as well. And then you get onto some of the other players who maybe didn't quite hit those heights. You've got the likes of Anderson, Biglia, Renato Augusto, Mikel, Rafinha, good squad players but not world class. Freddy Guarin's in there, Akinfeev, Lavezzi, De Guzman, and then towards the bottom you've got people like Per Skjerbred, Cardenas, Manuel Fernandez, Hugo Rodallega, Leighton Baines, Micah Richards, Steven Taylor, and at the bottom 34-year-old Julio Baptiste. I'm not sure he's quite a wonderkid 10 years ago, but he was a very good player. Steven Taylor deserves to be bottom of that pile though, there's no doubt about that. Micah Richards not far off him, but definitely getting more right than they got wrong. Absolutely no doubt in that. They did a really good job with some of these players, and it's a testament to how good the scouting network is that FM have around the world, picking out the best players from the best clubs. But what we're going to do today is go forward 2 years in time. We'll go 1 year first and then we'll go another year, and we'll see how they can do with Manchester United in the Premier League, and if they can still do the business. They've got the likes of Aguero, Messi and Sanchez leading the line. That is a terrifying front three, especially when you've got Walcott and Veo backing them up as well. David Silva in there, Modric behind them, companies in defence. There's no doubt they could do great things, but it's going to be really interesting to see if they can pick up any silverware. So what we'll do now is jump forward 1 year in time, and then we'll have a look at their fixtures and what they've managed to win. Well, we are now 1 year into the future. Jose Mourinho is still manager. Vincent Kompany, the captain. Luka Modric, vice-captain. And Lionel Messi, obviously their key player. Worth having a quick look at the transfer window because I did not put an embargo on them. But it looks like they haven't brought in anybody else other than the players that they already have. That probably makes sense given how many they've got. If we have a look at the squad and sort them by appearances, if that's possible, the game's suddenly switching. If we go to the selection info screen, we can see that the most appearances in the squad went to Alexis Sanchez. He got 23 goals, 14 assists, a very good season for him. Sergio Aguero getting 29 goals, top scorer, 3 assists as well. Lionel Messi with 25 goals. We said they were going to be a dangerous front three, and it definitely proved to be the case. Rafinha a mainstay as well. Modric obviously would always be in central midfield. Ramos in defence as well. Akinfeev the number one keeper. Mikel got a lot of game time in midfield too, which is a bit surprising. Marcelo, not a surprise. David Silva was always going to play as well. Vincent Kompany in there when he returned from injury. Lucas Leiva played quite a bit. Leighton Baines at left back as well. Ochoa got quite a lot of games as well. Rotated in. Carlos Vela as well in there. Athemi got quite a few, but I think mainly because they don't have much defensive cover. Lavezzi didn't play much. I didn't expect that. Same for Walcott. Kalou couldn't really get in the team. And Freddy Guarin bringing up the rear there. No Steven Taylor. He must be in the under-23s. There he is, alongside Micah Richards, Joe Astari, Hugo Rodallega, all down there, not getting any game time. So interesting, they've got the best players out there, as you would expect. It's a very strong team when you look at it like that, so I'm expecting them to have done quite well. But let's have a look at the senior squad schedule. And as we can see, pre-season went incredibly well for them. They won all of their games, not the most difficult opposition in fairness. And then they won the Community Shield 3-2 against Leicester. Anderson getting a goal on his return to United. Mata scored. Messi got them back in front. Mata then equalised. Obviously he'd been picked up by Leicester. And Renato Augusto got the win for United, giving them their first piece of silverware. They then won their first Premier League game of the season. Lionel Messi getting the goal against Hull. Beat Everton 2-0 as well. Sanchez and Aguero getting the goals. Then lost their first match 3-2 to West Ham. They did beat Chelsea 3-1 away though. Eden Hazard getting the goal for Chelsea, and then got their Europa League campaign off. Obviously they won this in real life. Be interested to see if they do it here. Drew 3-3 with Sunderland, 2-2 with Scunthorpe, going out of the EFL Cup on penalties. They then lost at home to Liverpool, which is not okay. They did beat Celtic though. Lost to Burnley away. Again, Sergio Ramos getting a red card, as he does. They then had a nice little run, crushed by Spurs 4-0 away. Losing to West Brom away. This is not a good start, really. And then losing at home. Sergio Ramos getting sent off again. Then they got a nice little run of form together, beating a few teams, drawing with Leicester, and then losing away to Arsenal 2-0. Then losing at home 3-1 to Southampton. The FA Cup came along. They did manage to beat Luton 2-1 away, playing a strong team from the looks of it. Then beat West Ham 4-0, drew with Liverpool, beat Spurs 3-1 in the FA Cup fourth round, so getting a bit of a cup run going here. Kalou, Sanchez, Messi all on the score sheet. Beat Chelsea 1-0 at home as well, Alexis Sanchez with a late goal, and then lost 3-2 at home. Always away. David Silva sent off after 17 minutes is pretty poor. They did make the Europa League knockout stages, drew with Napoli 1-1 in the first game. A late equaliser from Jose Callejon, that is heartbreaking, before then getting knocked out of the FA Cup as well. Bad few days there for Manchester United. They did come over Napoli though in the home game 3-1. Messi, Sanchez and Aguero, that dangerous trio carrying the team, and then beat Spurs 2-1 as well in the league. A couple of wins racked up in the last 16 of the Europa League. 3-1 win over Schalke, followed up by a 2-0 win away from home. Modric and Messi with the goals. Lost away 2-0 to Man City. Can't catch a break against the big teams whatsoever, but were winning other games. Beat Shakhtar 2-0 in the first leg of their quarter-final. Vea and Lavezzi with a goal. They had two men sent off Shakhtar, which will definitely have helped United. They then decided to lose 2-1 to Watford, and then went out to Shakhtar, losing 3-1 away. That's really, really poor. 2 goals for Ferreira and 1 for Fred. Alexis Sanchez got the away goal for United, but it was not enough, and they went out to Shakhtar on away goals, which is... Oh no, they must have gone through on away goals. It's only because it's a defeat on the night that it's got the red circle around it, that's why. So they did make it through. They then beat Leicester, lost to Swansea 2-1, and then beat Mainz in the semi-final 3-1. David Silva, Sanchez and Aguero all scoring. They really are just a top-heavy team pushing their way through. And then beat Mainz 2-1, making the Europa League final. So they have made that final. Despite David Silva getting sent off in the second leg, Carlos Vela made sure of it. They then lost 1-0 at home to Arsenal, beat Southampton 3-1, and then beat Manchester City in the Europa League final 2-2 on penalties. Absolutely excellent stuff. Going to extra time, Messi had got them the lead, De Bruyne equalised, and then Aguero and Fernandinho getting the goals in extra time before winning it on penalties. That is a very nice way for the Wonderkids to end the season, winning a piece of silverware and getting them back into the Champions League pretty much in the exact same way that they did in real life. They finished 6th in the Premier League as well, which is quite funny, winning that competition. I think United won the League Cup as well, didn't they? That was the difference. But there you can see 5 points off Spurs, clear of Leicester, but some way off Chelsea. A lot of ground to make up there next season if they are going to challenge at the top of the table, because they finished very much short. But I imagine they will probably sign some players in the summer which could help the team. So very good stuff that they managed to win at the Europa League. No doubt about that. That is quite an achievement, especially beating Man City in the final like that. Messi and Aguero doing the business for them. You can see their first and strongest 11 there as well. Aguero, Sanchez, Messi, and then played 3 in midfield, which is interesting, with Mikel, Modric and Leyva. Then it was Marcelo, Ramos, Company and Rafinha in defence, Akinfeev in goal. That is a very strong 11, there's no doubt in that. The Wonderkids from 2007 would still make a very strong team. But now let's jump forward another season and we'll take a look at where they are when they're 1 more year older. Well, as you can see from the transfer window, a bit of business did go on as Ezequiel Lavezzi was let go by the club. He left on a free transfer. Solomon Kalou went to Fiorentina. Rodrigo went, Athemi went, Fernandez went. Leighton Baines went to Bournemouth, Raul Garcia went, Freddie Guarin went to West Brom, Augusto went, Skelbred went to Napoli, Joe went to Alaves, and then a couple of other players left as well. But a lot of the players who just didn't feature last season all left, but the mainstay of the team is still together, and it's been reinforced because they brought in Angel Di Maria, who at the age of, how old is he now? 30. So he would have been in the game, but he wasn't listed as a Wonderkid, which is quite interesting. You then have Bruno Cunha, who's just a youngster that they brought in, maybe one for the future. Leander Den Docker has been brought in. Rudiger brought in from Roma as well, good signing there. And then Cohen van Imp, another youngster. So they haven't done too much different to the team. If we have a look at the senior squad schedule though, we'll see that their pre-season didn't go as well as it did last season, but they did beat Bayern 2-1, which is a good sign. But they started out by losing 2-1 to Tottenham. Harry Kane and Lamela getting the goal, Aguero trying to get one for United, and then lost 3-1 to PSG. Paul Pogba and Anthony Martial have left and come back to haunt Manchester United there with a 3-1 win for PSG, denying United another piece of silverware. They then had a good start after that in the league, beating Norwich, QPR, Crystal Palace and Swansea, and then beat Juventus 2-1 despite having Sergio Ramos sent off again. That man is a liability. But Di Maria and Messi were the goals there. And look at this winning run. It continued quite a way. They beat Southampton 2-0 in the EFL Cup, beat Leverkusen 3-2 as well. That's a tough Champions League group, but Di Maria again on the score sheet, really helping the team out. And then finally Man City brought the winning streak to an end, a 0-0 draw. But they continued winning in the Champions League, 2-1 against Legia Warsaw. Beat Watford 4-1 in the EFL Cup as well. Another win over Legia, helping them qualify for the Champions League there because they will have had 12 points by that point. Drew with Chelsea 0-0. Drew with Juventus 1-1 away from home, showing that wasn't a fluke. The following game was 3-2 win over Bournemouth. Beat Liverpool 1-0 in the EFL Cup quarter-final. Is there more silverware on the way? Lost to Stoke, but beat Leverkusen again in the Champions League, finishing there with 5 wins and a draw. Is not bad at all in what is a difficult group. Then had a bit of a rough patch in the Premier League in December, struggling a little bit across that sort of time period, and then beat Watford 3-1 in the FA Cup. Drew 1-1 with Newcastle in the first leg of the EFL Cup. Surely going to turn that over in the second leg. Messi scored in the first minute, but they couldn't hold it out. Not doing too bad in the Premier League at the moment. They must have struggled later in the season based on their final position, but they did beat Newcastle 3-0, 2 for Sanchez and 1 for Angel Gomez, as they managed to make their way to Wembley. Also beat Southampton 3-1 in the FA Cup 4th round. And if we just run down, they beat Benfica 2-1 away in the Champions League first knockout round first leg. Di Maria and Messi with the goals. Rafa Silva got one for Benfica. That's a good result. Went out of the FA Cup though 3-1. Fletcher, Rondon and Chadley embarrassing United, who put out a very strong team. And then they lost in the EFL Cup final. Sergio Ramos sent off again. 3-2 it went to extra time. Ramos got sent off just after Griffiths made it 3-2. That's really, really disappointing they weren't able to win that, given they were playing Crystal Palace in the final. Surely a bitter defeat. And Lionel Messi got a 10.0 rating in that game, and yet they still lost it. That was a run of 3 straight defeats, drew with Arsenal, but did overcome Benfica. 5-2 on aggregate. Messi with 2, Aguero with 1 as well. They did very, very well, and have made their way into the Europe's quarter-finals. Then they beat Atletico Madrid 2-0 at home. Villa and Modric with the goals. Could we see a Champions League win coming? They lost to Bournemouth and then lost to Madrid, but it didn't matter. They still went through to the Champions League semi-finals. The Wonderkids of FM 2007 in the Champions League semi-finals. They beat Stoke, drew with Newcastle, then lost to Arsenal 1-0. This could be their undoing. English teams. Douglas Costa with the goal, sinking United in the first leg. Lost to Southampton as well. This isn't a good run of form to going into a Champions League semi-final. And then lost again. They were knocked out in the semi-finals by Arsenal. Really disappointing they couldn't go all the way there. And then who would they have played in the Champions League? The winners were Man City in the end. They beat Arsenal 1-0. So that could have been a really interesting final if they made their way through. But their form at the end of the season was pretty terrible. Going out of the FA Cup was a trigger, and then they only won 5 games from mid-February to the end of the season. That's really sad because they'd done so well up to that point. If we have a look at the Premier League, we'll see that they finished 6th, but they weren't too far off 4th place, 8 points off this time, only 1 point off a 5th place finish as well, but still quite some way off the title. So not good enough to win the title, but nearly good enough to win the Champions League. And if we just have a quick look at the players and see who their best performers were, you can see Luka Modric, most appearances. Aguero got 30 goals, that is particularly good. 13, only 13 for Alexis Sanchez. Di Maria got 8, Messi got 14, 10 assists for him, 17 assists for Sanchez. So, but all of the goals really coming from Aguero this season. It was more evenly spread last time out. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same players as last season with the new signings making up the appearances. Bigley is still getting quite a lot of games, which I find quite funny. At 32 years old, surely they can replace him soon. But that's going to be it, really, for this experiment. Unless you guys want to see another couple of years, do let me know down in the comments. But I found that really enjoyable, just looking at some of the former Wonderkids and seeing how they would do these days. If you'd like to see me do the same for the FM 2008 Wonderkids, they are very different year on year, lots of new players come through, then do drop a like on the video and let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will put off the experiments until the new game comes out. But otherwise, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more experiments like this, especially when the new game does come out in about a month's time. And until next time, see ya!